Welcome to the Orkney Museum and to the Ness of Brodgar Past, Present and Future, an exhibition that celebrates 20 seasons of excavation at this amazing Neolithic complex, but also looks forward to the next several years of post-excavation analysis, where we draw together the thousands of strands of piece of evidence that we have into a coherent narrative for the site.
So the exhibition took months to design with conversations back and forth with various members of the Ness of Brodgar Trust. But when it comes to the building, most of the work here was done by a team of three: Katie Firth, Norna Sinclair and myself. The way we've organised the show is to try and get across different qualities of the place, the Ness of Brodgar, and the way in which our work has unfolded over time. And the exhibition is called Ness of Brodgar, Past, Present and Future. And we've taken that as the sort of guiding theme for the way in which all the exhibits have been arranged across the museum. So we have several rooms, each dealing with a different aspect. This room, room 1, is focused on the past. This is a focus on the Neolithic and on the extraordinary archaeology that we've recovered here over the last 20 years. The remarkable buildings, the spectacular architecture, but also the very wide range of artifacts that have turned up during the course of our excavations. So we wanted to try and give a flavour of the place, the buildings, and all of the different finds that we've had over the last 20 years. The Ness of Brodgar has an extraordinary history. The site during the Neolithic lasts for something like 1,500 years. And that's a remarkable span of time, and it's actually very difficult for people to get their heads around that. So one of the ways in which we've tried to catch that time depth, that really rich, long and complex history, is in the arrangement of cases around the rooms, but also through the addition of a distinctive timeline, which gives a sense of that extraordinary duration. The Ness of Brodgar, Past, Present and Future is unavowedly a visual exhibition. It's an exhibition that's put together to encourage people to look at material and to look close at material. But vision is only one sense. We've also tried to harness sound in this show. So in room 1, we have a sound installation by Susie Angus, who worked with us a few years ago, which catches qualities of the landscape and the voices of different people involved in the project, talking about different qualities of place and time.
7,000 years ago, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers walked the long ridge of land in the heart of Orkney, known today as the Ness of Brodgar. Later, Neolithic farmers chose that land to erect massive stone buildings, forming a centre that would endure for 75 generations before its abandonment and eventual burial. For 4,000 years it lay under the soil.
This room has been laid out in chronological order. So here we have structure 5, and it goes round the room to end in structure 10. Each of the cases here display an assemblage of artefacts that were found within that structure. And it sort of reflects what was going on in the buildings and how they used tools such as these here. It's got stone hammers, we've got some axes, we also have some scale flint knives and some cramp. And you can see how they just used the materials that they had, and it just shows their intuitive ways.
So the artefacts in this case have been grouped together, not because they all belong to the same type or category of object, but they've got something else in common. They're all tiny. We grouped all of these objects together to show the large quantity of tiny things that are found at the Ness. And this is in a sharp contrast to the huge scale of the enormous structures that we find on the site. We've got a range of objects in here, from tiny beads which have been found in environmental samples to little clay balls which are a bit of a mystery in themselves. But one of my favourites is this little amulet here, which is a flint fossil of a sea urchin.
7,000 years ago, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers walked the long ridge of land in the heart of Orkney, known today as the Ness of Brodgar.
In keeping with the idea that we wanted to break with conventionally displaying material by category, pots or stones or bones, in this particular room, we've placed an emphasis on displaying material in relation to the structures in which it was found, the different buildings in which material was excavated. Each building has produced vast quantities of material, but what we've selected here is a range of artifacts of different materials, rock, bone, different kinds of pottery, to reflect the character of the deposits that we found in each building. As we were excavating, it became quickly apparent that different buildings had different kinds of material associated with them. There were lots of similarities as well, but Structure 12, for example, has huge quantities of pottery, and we've reflected that in the display. In Structure 8, by contrast, although there are lots of pots as well, we find lots of very carefully worked and finished spatulate tools made out of fine sandstones and siltstones and mudstones. And in Structure 10, we also find things like carved stone balls and pigment sources, things like lumps of hematite, which seem to have been worked quite extensively within Structure 10. So a flavour of the artefacts that we found, but also the character of their associations with different buildings. We've tried to give a flavour of the kinds of artefacts that we find associated with individual buildings, but we also want to give a sense of the character of the buildings themselves. And obviously they're very, very big, so that's actually quite difficult in a show indoors. However, working with Ian Ashman, we've created a series of information boards, and in this room, one board accompanies each case relating to an individual structure. The boards give a flavour of the character of the archaeology, the dimensions of buildings, the character of the masonry, and a kind of potted history, a potted biography of the life of the building over time. There's a variety of different photographic sources, but also a lot of text, a bit of information about the nature of the buildings, and QR codes that link to further information which can be accessed on the website. One of the other distinctive features of all the information boards in the show is that they include small cartoon-like illustrations by Alex Leonard. And these have been designed to catch the attention and hopefully the imagination of some of our younger visitors. Although, truth be told, irrespective of age, people have found these a really nice and catching little element in the displays. But the characters are posing questions. They're asking the visitors what they think about some of the material they're looking at, or some of the arguments and interpretations that have been offered by us on the information boards.
Although we were keen not to group things by categories, we had to work with the space that we had. And this case had fantastic lighting, so we decided to group these particular items together as a category, and this is the bling of the Ness of Brodgar.
Striking stones, tokens of identity.
Tokens of identity.
Striking stones, tokens of identity.
Striking stones.
So adjacent to room 1, in this small alcove, we've pulled together examples of some of the decorated stone that has been found on the site over the last 20 years. This is material that's being looked at by Dr. Antonia Thomas, and it includes carved stones of various kinds with lots of geometric and size patterns, but also peck dress stones that have been carefully shaped by repeated hammering, and also stones that have been coloured or chosen for their colour. And we wanted to use this particular space to really bring home how life back in the Neolithic was not black and white, and that people were making aesthetic choices about the fabric of their buildings, the surface of their buildings, the way that they paid attention to them by carving and pecking and sizing. So colour was certainly a very, very important thing to people back in the Neolithic, and it made a big difference to the impact of the inside of their buildings as well as the outside. In this display, for example, we've got a number of really finely peck-dressed triangular stones of sort of creamy white and that lovely rich red. And then these stones, one on top of the other, formed part of the dresser in structure 10. So we've tried to place these to really emphasize their architectural qualities, but also the dramatic impact that the colour would have had. And to pick that up as a theme, we've been lucky to have a painting by Jeannie Rose, which adorns the back of this display, which again picks up a lot of the colours that are imminent to the process of excavation, but also would have been a really important part of the experience of the buildings back in the Neolithic.
People like us. People like us.
One of the things that we were very keen on trying to catch in the layout and the design of this exhibition was an encouragement to visitors to look at things in a different way. I think it's kind of an expectation that if you go to a museum, you look at exhibits, you look at displays in a particular kind of way. Whereas if you go, let's say, to an art gallery gives an expectation of a different kind of attention to things, a different kind of looking close. So one of the things that we were keen to do throughout the show was to mix those different aesthetics, the kind of things you'd find in a gallery and the kind of things you'd find in a museum, to encourage people to look at things from different vantages and in different ways.
"7,000 years ago, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers walked the long ridge of land in the heart of Orkney, known today as the Ness of Brodgar. People like us.
So this area of the exhibition is the Ness of Brodgar in the present, looking at the excavation that's been happening on the site for the last 20 years. So the information board has an array of statistics to show the enormity of the scale of the operation, the number of people involved, the number of tons of earth and stone that have been moved. We also wanted to involve an archaeologist because elsewhere in the exhibition, the actual digger is not really featured. It's all about the material culture or the science involved. We really wanted to make sure that there was somewhere for the archaeologists themselves to be included. And also, this was a nice linking space. We had to use the space available. The spaces were quite disjointed from each other in the museum. So this space it made sense whether you're going from room 1 to upstairs or upstairs down to room 1. It still kind of linked the two different themes of the past and the future. And it's also given us an opportunity to hide a little character in the pier. So we have little Orkney voles hidden around the exhibition, crocheted voles, but they link to the site as well because a lot of vole bone has been found during excavations. So it's been a challenge for children and adults to go around and see if they can find them. So this part of the exhibition is about the Ness of Brodgar in the future, and it's looking at something that visitors to the site don't get to see, the behind-the-scenes analysis and scientific research that goes on. And here we look at the individual experts who have been involved in carrying out that research.
Why don't you move it? Can you give us 1 meter over?
Okay. That will be 7-1. 171.
I think so.
Great. Structure activity. What have we got?
So in this room, again, sound is an important part of the installation. And we've worked with an artist, Karen Wallace, who's produced a film, but also a sound piece which explores the character of the archaeological process itself. And she's captured conversations with a variety of different archaeologists working on the site, talking about what they're doing, about their responses to the place, about the nature of their practice.
3912.310.
Give yourself a first note with a twin phone.
Oh, cool, baby.
So with the emphasis in this room very much on the ongoing research that's being conducted on the materials from the Ness, we want to give a sense of what that work involves and the people who are undertaking that work with us, but also a sense of the kind of things that we're learning from their work. So in this case, for example, we're focusing on rocks and raw materials that have been used to make a variety of different stone tools, the work of people like Hugo Anderson Weinmark, Martha Johnson, and others. And one of the things that's nice about this material is it shows how close attention to the rock can open up all sorts of different avenues to interpretation. So for example, here we've got macehead fragments, large flakes of stone and small flakes of stone, but the dark ones at the front come from the island of Arran in the Western Isles, as do a couple of the macehead fragments. The large stone flake here comes from the Lake District. These ones over here are from closer to home, but they come from the sort of neighbourhood of Stromness and a little bit further over to the west in the mainland. So you get that sense of different scales of community being brought together at the Ness, reflected in the stones that we find. So it's that kind of insight which we've already started to build, which we want to sort of give a sense of for the visitor.
There's an excavation.
So part of preparations in pulling together an exhibition is how you visually and physically occupy the space. So you have to work with what you have. But you also have to be playful and engage the audiences in different ways. So flint here, for example, is one of my favourite artefacts, and I was given a little bit of free rein artistically how to display them. So we've come up with this light box which really highlights the edges and also the beauty of the flint that was used, the colours and everything.
Right, lunchtime.
Oh. Is there a bag for that inch peak?
No, I'll just put this away. I'll be away. So what are you asking for?
7290.
keep an eye on it. I don't think it's hugely significant just at the moment, but keep an eye on how it goes. It does start to look
Okay? Yeah, because I don't want that you run close to the section and this woman wants to survive, okay? So take care of her. Yes, and I don't want the tires inside, okay?
One of the things I enjoyed about working on the Ness of Brodgar exhibition was finding out new things about a subject that I already thought I knew quite well. So one of those examples was learning about micromorphology and the process behind how it's done. And I found it really interesting how a block of soil is taken out of a section in the site and then it's set into resin before being cut up into these very exact blocks, which I thought are really beautiful pieces in their own right. And then slices of those are taken and set on microscope slides. I found it really interesting to learn about that process.
I've got some old bits of sheet. Want some big, bits go right way across. Okay.
I just wanted to see if you weren't wandering around like an Egypt.
This art installation, we're going to call it, came about from sitting at Loch View, which all these boxes are stored there, sitting in meetings, and I was just completely fascinated by the sort of wall of boxes and all the writing on it, all the records that was kept, and I thought it would be a great way to take it here and break up this space as well. They're really visually beautiful in their own right and really does give you a sort of snapshot into what is going on at the Ness as far as artefacts and how they're stored and collected. I mean, we've got incised stone there, we've got pumice there, there's record of the years that they were found, and it just is, like I say, a snapshot.
Yeah, no, I really like it because normally it would be the contents of the boxes that would be on display, whereas the boxes themselves are a record of the work of collection that's gone on, the sorting and classification material across years and years.
Yes.
And there's so much writing on these things, context numbers and years and structures and so on, that when people do pause, as they often do, they get drawn into thinking about what all this material represents. Here and there, dotted about, there's 4 or 5 in each panel, there are short haikus. And these just relate to materials that are in the boxes. And they're basically trying to catch a little story, a little vignette, a little quality of the kinds of activities, the kinds of people that may have been engaged with those materials 5,000 years ago, and just place that on the boxes throughout this particular piece.
Again, it's that idea of just a different way to exhibit and engage with the audiences that are coming about.
We didn't tell anybody that we were doing it. We didn't sort of flag it up.
No.
And what's quite nice is that although certainly lots of people have gone round, enjoyed the show, written comments in the visitor's book, saying how much they liked it, they hadn't noticed the poetry at all.
Yeah.
Many others, though, did. And then it just adds that extra level. And it's about looking close and discovering something and finding an insight, which is another way of trying to catch the archaeological process, I guess.
Yeah. And it's this layers of discovery, whether it be in the boxes, in the cases, in the panels, interpretation. It's about discovering.
Yeah.
$7,000 years ago, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers walked the long ridge of land in the heart of Orkney, known today as the Ness of Brodgar.
The Ness of Brodgar, past, present and future, is by nature a temporary exhibition. will be closing very shortly, and all of this material will go back into its boxes and off to the various specialists who will be looking at the material over the next few years and trying to draw from their analyses an interpretation of the site, which will carry forward into publication. It's been an absolute pleasure to put this show together with the team, and it's worked really, really well, largely thanks to the support of the Orkney Museum, who've been here day in, day out, helping, assisting, offering advice, and it's been a tremendous experience, very positive. But this material is going to be taken down. And one of the things that we hope for the future is that eventually all of the material from the Ness of Brodgar will be archived here in Orkney, where it belongs, and that in time, when there's space, a permanent exhibition, a record of our work and of our findings will find a home here in Orkney.
One of the big sheets in. Okay. We'll just cover the whole thing now. Right. Okay. Tire it. Think there's a big sheet on that side.